Hajime! Welcome back to Comic-Jutsu. JT McRoberts here with you once again, and today we're going to take you through another episode of What Comics Did You Buy This Week? We're speaking of the week that's just passed, or the one listed in the title, not to confuse you. But anyway, we're going to keep trying to bring you entertaining and hopefully some thought-provoking comic discussion. Today we're going to look at all the crap that I bought this past week, whether it was at one of the local comic book shops or buying it online. So here we go. We see an ad for an upcoming in-store signing featuring Ray Park. The store is not actually sponsoring Comic-Jutsu, but I thought I'd show that to you. I picked that up. If anybody wants to sponsor Comic-Jutsu, just reach out to us. comicjutsu@gmail.com, of course. Here's one I got in the mail for the Charlotte Comic-Con. Okay, so I only picked up a few things this week, a few in the store and a few online. This has been out for a while now, but there's a semi-permanent Image First section at most of the local shops that I go to. And I've been seeing this name Radiant Black for a while online, both on Twitter and on Facebook. And I thought, you know what, I don't know what this is, but it looks cool. I like the design of the character. I like the name. I like the design of the logo. Everything looks good. Get it for the Image First price of $1, and you really can't beat that. Next up, I picked up Prophet #1. I am a stone cold sucker for first issues. I love to buy first issues just to see how artists and writers and even different companies approach the task of a first issue. You know, how much of the story do they give you right off the bat? Do they give it to you in drips and drabs? Do they give you a front heavy exposition of word salad and, you know, pseudo science fiction or fantasy or what have you, or horror even? Or do they draw it out? And it's interesting to look at the difference between modern comics and, you know, some of the classic comics that, if you're of my generation, that you would have seen growing up, where they were making them from issue to issue, and they may not have had such a tight overall plan. I mean, yeah, they probably knew where they were going, but the stories were just kind of, in some cases, just made up from month to month, and it's interesting to see how they kind of build and come together. So this is another relaunch of the Prophet character from Rob Liefeld. Haven't read it, just picked it up. I've always dug Prophet. I mean, I even had the initial issues of it when it was first released by Image. Once Stephen Platt took over, I kind of came back to the character. The initial stories, they kind of suffered from the same problem that a lot of the early Image books suffered from, and that was that they weren't real strong in the narrative department. I mean, they had these kind of central mysteries, but sometimes the stories just weren't there. So you really were in for the Image ride, for the artwork and the experience of going through those pages. Here we've got book 1 of Starhenge, The Dragon and the Boar by Liam Sharp. I first became aware of Liam Sharp from the Death's Head 2 miniseries released by Marvel back in the day. Check it out. This is some of his early comic book work from then. It's got a gatefold cover there. Very nice. You can see a very heavy Jim Lee influence here. But I guess this was inked by Paul Neary, which is interesting. Paul Neary was part of a great run of Captain America back in the 80s. But I thought this just sounds really cool. I follow Liam Sharp online, and it was interesting to hear his story of not being able to find comic work for the longest time, and how much that just depressed him. But he said, you know, it's worth it if you can stick it out and eventually make your way into self-publishing, because he's happier than he's ever been doing his own creator-owned stuff. And here we have Starhenge. I love the idea, Starhenge, like a play on Stonehenge, except it's, futuristic, like something Grant Morrison would come up with almost, which we're a big fan of here on Comic-Jutsu. And those were the only recent books that I've picked up. So the rest came from eBay. And what I got was a really sweet stack of ROM books. I'm supposed to take that off. It was to fill in my collection. These are the preceding issues that I already had. Battle with the Scrolls. There's Dark Star and Vanguard, I believe is her brother's name. And Ursa Major, the Soviet super soldiers. Pretty cool. But I had those already. But I need to fill in some of the 50s and 60s and 70s. And I got a really good deal on a lot. I actually had somebody that tried to bid against me, but thank goodness I wound up winning, and it wasn't a huge expense. They didn't go crazy on the bidding. They just dropped in a couple test bids to see if my initial bid would go up, which it did. Little did they know they had reached my threshold, and if they bid again, they were probably going to get it from me. I wasn't going to drop another bid on that lot, but it helps fill in this really fun run. Yeah, you can see that I'm just passing right over this, but Bill Sienkiewicz did a lot of the covers in the 50s issues. That first one was Mike Zeck. Mike Zeck, probably my favorite cover artist of 80s Marvel. Though, I mean, at the time, that's what I'm talking about. Though now it would probably be Sienkiewicz, though I have great affection for anything Mike Zeck does. But if I saw a Mike Zeck cover on a book, whether it was Captain America, G.I. Joe, just anywhere, The Punisher, I had to buy it, whether he was doing the interior artwork or not. It just always sold me. Here's a guest starring Alpha Flight, and they got John Byrne to do the cover. Good idea. I was always a huge ROM fan because, one, I was actually there to see the action figure, the collector's figure, whatever it was called back then, on the shelves. I mean, I remember looking up at it, and it was like $100 or something, even back then. And to me, that just seemed like $1,000, and it might as well have been $1 million, because my parents did not buy it for me, and I wanted it, and I was so young at the time, I had no way to gain any sort of money or income to actually purchase something like that. But I came across the comic book a few years later, and I'm like, hey, I remember ROM. And by virtue of the fact that he had these constant crossovers, there's a Bob Layton cover. He had these constant crossovers with established Marvel characters that I was either familiar with already, like the X-Men, or I was becoming familiar with them. Whatever secondary heroes that they had featured. Like here you have a crossover with Avengers, and they've got Beta Ray Bill there. The Final Conflict versus the Wraiths. Here he is battling one of his rival Star Knights, Rayok. Now this, I remember very vividly seeing this on the shelf, and it was probably not long after I started buying comics on a regular basis. All the earlier ROMs that I had seen and that I had in my collection, I actually got from a friend. But I remember seeing this on the shelf, and I just thought, this just looks ridiculous. Rick Jones looks ridiculous here. I knew who Rick Jones was from The Incredible Hulk, but the comic book and the cartoon, he was in the cartoon at the time. It really indoctrinated a generation of comic book and superhero fans. See some Al Milgrom covers there at the end, and this is the next to last issue. The final issue, number 75, which I need to get, features artwork by P. Craig Russell, so it's a really nice cover. And here we go. I picked this one up, not online, but at one of the local shops. They had it for $3, which is great. And it's actually part of a Reed Richards of Counter Earth storyline, where that Reed Richards is the Brute. He's kind of the Incredible Hulk of that universe, which carries over. I'm trying to fill in my Brute collection. He's one of my favorite underrated, underutilized villains. Here you can see his original appearances in The Power of Warlock from way back when. And of course, I've bought these over the years. And it's just to fill in my Brute collection. Here's where the Brute joins up with the Frightful Four. And I bought these from, what's that mail-in service? Comic. Darn it. Obviously, I don't use it anymore because nowadays we have eBay and whatnot. But at the time, you know, they had these ads for all these back issues, and they had them listed under prices. And this 177 I always wanted to get because it was featured in several entries in Marvel Universe for first appearances for characters. And I love first appearances for characters. Even as a young dude, when I wasn't really writing any kind of stories or anything other than just creating adventures with my action figures, I just love the idea of first appearances of characters. So here you have the Osprey, but the Texas Twister. This is probably the guy that made me buy this issue. I was just curious about the Texas Twister, and it's like, well, how does this guy factor into a Fantastic Four issue? And he just kind of blows through. But here they tell his origin in just a few panels. You have Thundra, Captain Ultra. This was his first, and I think maybe only appearance. He may have made another appearance somewhere down the road, but I don't remember. Check that out. Hang loose. It's the juice. Comic-Jutsu does not endorse. Superheroes Assemble. I used to love those old ads. And I would look at this and I'd just be like, wow, look at all these other comics that they're publishing. And it actually makes it very attainable, where you're looking at the list and you've got like, 15 titles there. And you think, this is something I could attain. It's not a list of 50 titles a month, that just seems insurmountable. Here you have Tigra shows up. And of course, near the end, this wasn't supposed to be a review or whatever, but I just wanted to show you the Brute. This was my first introduction to the Brute. And I was like, who is this dude? Who's this Brute guy? This is awesome. And to spoil it there, the last panel, I won't show it to you too closely, just in case you want to go back and check that stuff out. Starhenge isn't sponsoring the Comic-Jutsu either, but if there's a creator out there or a local comic shop or convention like HeroesCon, feel free to reach out and let me know, and we can work out a deal. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Click the links below. Like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to tell your friends, your family about Comic-Jutsu and bring them in. All are welcome to become denizens of the Comic Book Dojo. We'll see you next time. Mate!